none of these guys have ever been into a war zone and gotten shot at. They haven't been tear gassed, like really smart and brilliant in these ways, but I'm like really tough in these ways. And I just try to remind myself of that.
That's awesome.
Because it's really easy to just like have recency bias. Like, I see these really impressive people and I don't think that I'm that kind of impressive. So ergo, I'm not impressive. And I try to remind myself, I'm like, oh, like I've done some really crazy things.
Welcome to the Masters of Integration podcast. We aim to change the narrative from Jack of all trades, master of none, to Jack of all trades, master of integration. Join us as we talk to people who have discovered how to combine one thing with another so that they become whole. We will hear how their journeys have shaped who they have become and their unique successes. Our hope is that their stories will inspire you to find your purpose, discover who you are, and integrate your diverse passions and skills into your life. To being whole. Let's go. Suzanne is a former actress in Miss Arab USA turned writer. Her debut memoir, Postpartum Me, is a dark comedy on postpartum depression and anxiety, and now an Amazon bestseller. Amazing. Man, thank you so much for being on the Master Integrated podcast.
Happy to talk to you.
Yeah, seriously. It's such an honor. And it was really great to meet you and then hear your story at your book release. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be where you're at? That's a big loaded question.
It's a really big question.
Yeah, let me let's break it down. Let's break it down. So let's tell us about your book and what led to that.
That's easy. So we'll just take that that era. So I was an actress and I loved filmmaking, indie films. I did commercial work. That's not very fun because you don't get to like really play a person. Have you ever looked at a commercial and they ever had a name? They're not characters. So that's my opinion. So for me, I really loved when I could take on a character and have dialogue and like really sort of, I think there's this really weird thing about actors where we sort of like to not be us. Like you want to go off and be somebody else for a while. We don't always really like it in our own skin. So I liked playing other people. I liked having flawed characters and you had to not judge them, but love them enough to portray them, even though maybe they're not the best people. So also I really loved when I did action movies. That was my favorite.
Which I can't wait. I mean, you have to tell me what films you were because I gotta watch them.
I don't even know if I could track them down because you make these like passion projects, but sometimes they don't get made.
True.
Because filmmaking, which as you understand, it's a village project, and it's really hard when you want to pursue a passion, but it requires a collective, and you don't have that collective per se. So filmmaking, like I'm so reliant on other people. Like I can act, but then are you going to edit it? Are you going to finish doing all of the post-production stuff? Are you going to find the right musicians to do all this? There's just so many things. And then so many times we make movies and then nothing went good. And it was just a good time. And and it was fine. It was fine.
For sure.
But I became a mom and I had a really hard time with postpartum depression. And it was just really hard to get out of the house and shoot indie films because those are like overnight shoots and I just couldn't do it. So I stopped, which did not help my depression. And then I started writing because my husband and I would write scripts together. And we always really liked it. It was sort of a creative pastime for us. And we've got a bunch of scripts locked away that we hope to make someday. But I really enjoyed the dialogue portion of it. I was really good at that. And so I just kind of started writing for myself just because I like to be creative. And then I realized that I wanted to write a book about postpartum depression because I had a really hard time not just with experiencing it, but not realizing what it was that I was experiencing. I didn't know I had it when I had it, which just made things worse because I was like, oh, this is just what it's like to be a mom. This is terrible. So I wanted to just get that out there so moms felt seen and heard and understood. And I just kind of want to hold your hand and let you know, hey, I'm with you. This is hard. Go ask for help. Maybe I can just give you the strength and the courage to go ask for help too. So anyway, I did that and I wrote it in the form of journal entries so you could really get inside my head. And I created dialogue in it. So the journal entries aren't real. The stories actually happen. Every scenario, every chapter was a real thing that happened. But I just created dialogue just for the fun of it. And what I really liked about that is I didn't have to rely on any village. I made it myself. I did not, because being an actor, I was like, oh, I hope somebody hires me. This time I was like, I'm putting my book out there on my own. I don't want to rely on a book agent or a publisher. Like, I hope you, because I'm not a Kardashian, I'm not the Princess of Wales, so they're not going to be really interested in picking me up. So I decided to do it on my own this time and not rely and wait and hope somebody sees me.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, one, my wife loves your book, and I've never seen her in the years that we've been married or been dating pick up a book and like she had to pace herself.
Yeah.
She was like, Alex, I know you're traveling, and so I need to have something to do, and I want to finish this book right now, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna like pace myself so I have something to do. But she was like so excited, and I've never seen her like that. And she was like, and even to this day, she'll be like, I wish every book was written like this.
Aww.
And yeah, and she'll tell her friends about it and stuff. And she was like, man, like this is like the only book that I like really love right now. And she like really related to it. There was multiple times that I would come home from work and she would be sitting on the couch reading it, and she'd be like, Alex, you gotta listen to this. Really? And then she'll read like pages to me, and I'm just like, man.
Wow.
And so it really meant a lot to her. So obviously it means a lot to me. Mm-hmm. And also it meant a lot that you gave her a book, and then like you signed it and stuff, and that was really kind of you. So I think how I see like art and creativity is anything like, cause it's based off a Seth Godin book, like Curse Deception, where he says creativity and art is anything that connects us to another person. And so I think the thing that you do as a writer and an author is that you're connecting other people because of your vulnerability. And she laughed. I mean, I remember she was saying like, oh man, I can picture some of these moments because I know where these locations are.
Because it's here in
Yeah. And she loves true food and stuff like that. Yeah. And so she's like, man, like it feels even more real to me. So yeah, I just more so saying thank you for writing that book. And she's really thankful. Awesome. And so pick up the book. Please do it now. It's so freaking good. We'll put it in the link.
And it's funny.
Yes, it's hilarious.
I love making people laugh. I think it's such a great way to connect with people in hardship. And if you're a depressed mom and you're reading my book, I don't want you to be like, I really want to just lighten you up a little bit. I think there's times to be serious. I'm just not that. I don't want to be that person for you. I want to be the person that makes you laugh.
Yeah. So, okay. One thing that I love about this is, so you were an actor, and then because it takes a village, you then, it's interesting because so then you took that same kind of passion. You were script writing, and then you moved to writing. And it's like cool to see that in that process. Do you feel like it was super intentional that you knew that it was gonna end up becoming a book, or that process of doing an actress or then like script writing and then a book, or was it more like you were following these desires and passions inside of you that kind of led to this moment that you are in now?
Oh, I think I always knew I wanted it to be a book. Have you ever read Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning? Okay. He's amazing. He wrote this book called Miracle Morning, and it's about how to set your life up for success every morning. And he has this tips on like how to wake up early, and then, which I'm really bad at. Sorry, Hal. But there's these things that you do. So I was doing it for a little bit, and it's like you wake up in the morning and do these like same 6 things. Like you write, you do affirmations, you visualize, and then there's 3 other things, I can't remember what they are. You read. And one of them was the visualization. So I was like visualizing my life, and I was like, what does that look like? And this was coming out of postpartum, and I was super, super angry that nobody told me and was honest with me about what motherhood and postpartum depression really is like. And so I came out of it and I was like, what on earth? Why are you lying to me? Like from one mom to another, like, why are you acting like this is the best thing that's ever happened to you? Because it did not feel that way. So I just remember being like so angry. I didn't know what to do about it. And then I'm doing these visualizations and trying to see what I want my life to look like. And I visualized being at a house. And it was this guy's house that I knew. We'd been there before, and I remember just really liking his house. And we went for a cocktail party, and it was really lovely. But that was my house, and I was doing a book launch at my house, and we had all these people over, and my husband was giving a toast, and I just had this whole visualization. I was like, I want to do that. And I just ended up. I didn't even mean to do a book launch. Like I launched my book a year before I did the launch. Because I was afraid, and I didn't want to give myself that kind of attention. It felt very uncomfortable for me. But yeah, so I always knew I wanted to do a book. I just sort of kind of visualized doing it, and then it happened.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So the visualization piece, was that something that was like, it was a vision, or did you like have to manufacture it in your mind?
I manufactured it. I played with it. Like I just sat there trying to see what I wanted my life to look like. And I was kind of like playing around with some things and just sort of seeing all these different scenarios. And that was the one that just felt really real to me.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
So then fast forward to now that all happened. And yeah, how does that, I don't know, feel, or what does that mean to you to think back about that moment of visualizing those things to then actually seeing it come to fruition? Are these the expectations that you had and hoped for?
It's weird. I'm struggling. I'm struggling because I downplay everything that I do that's successful. It's really not that big of a deal. I was an Amazon bestseller. A lot of people are Amazon bestsellers. Who really cares? I became a bestseller when I did a promotion. So it was either free or 99 cents. I can't remember. And I did this promotion. So that's why it was a bestseller. And I just kept finding reasons to downplay it. Even up until Tuesday, I was on a call, like a women in business call. And I was like, whatever. It's like really not that big of a deal. And everybody was like, hold on. You actually found a way during COVID and homeschooling. I wrote a book, and then you put it out there, and it's super, super vulnerable. And they were like trying to, and they're like, and then like not everybody does that, let alone actually become you get to say that you were a bestseller. And I'm just like, yeah, but I don't know. There's a part of me that like never thinks I'm good enough, and that my achievements are never enough. It's not that big of a deal. I always downplay it. And I think there's just a part of me that just like, I could be president and still be like, it takes a village to get you there, and never had a lot of help. Like I would never just be like, I'm amazing.
Sure.
It's really, really hard for me. I think it comes probably originally from the desire to be humble, coupled with the feeling inadequate.
Yeah. It's crazy. The first podcast we did, I was talking with an artist and a painter, and we got into this conversation about humility because I think you feel the same way. I felt the same way of just like struggling with how do you be humble and be excellent? And then what is false humility?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And then it becomes...
But you're also supposed to be proud of yourself at the same time. Like I tell my kids, I might tell my kids I'm proud of you, but then I'll follow it up with, are you proud of yourself? Because I want them to be proud of themselves. But then they're also supposed to be humble. And it gets really convoluted because I guess in a real world, you should be able to be humble and proud of yourself. But then how does that actually come into fruition? And how do you actually act upon those ideals? I don't know.
For sure. Well, it's so I never know my lyrics, but there's this line I wrote of I doubt myself a lot, but I wrote all these songs and I put them out. Whether they're good or not, it didn't matter to me. But it was like, and in the lyric, it was like, this is a catalog of proof that I was once brave. And I think for me, when someone's going to tell me, or I'm telling myself, really, I can't do it, I doubt myself. It's like, remember, you were vulnerable enough when you were younger to like put this out and put your thoughts out there. Like you were brave, even though you don't think so. And so I'm actually really fascinated about this conversation because recently I was in therapy and he was asking me these questions and I was like talking and I would debate myself and I'd be like, yo, shouldn't I be like, isn't this selfish if I do this?
Right.
But then how do I do this if I want to care for someone?
Right.
Is that still being selfish? And just like this back and forth. And he was like, dude, what if your friend came up to you and said these things? What would you say to him? And I started crying because I was like, man, I would say it's okay.
We're so much kinder to other people than to ourselves.
Yeah.
So much kinder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me on the outside looking in, right? To me, I see you as a confident person.
I used to be an actor.
But yeah, so I mean, like you carry yourself that way, but I think there's also this bravery of vulnerability that's where I see a confidence in, is that you have a confidence in who you are because you're willing to be vulnerable regardless of the kind of feedback that people may give or say. And I think that takes a lot of bravery that I don't think people really give, I don't know, props to or respect to. And so for me, when I see that, like when you said, hey, I'm an open book, when you wrote it in the form, it's just, man. And then on your podcast, you're like super vulnerable. The fact that even in this business call with this women's entrepreneurs or the business, it's like, you're willing to say, hey, is this really a big deal?
Yeah.
And whether or not that's how you feel fully or not, it's like you're willing to say how you feel.
Yeah.
And so for me, I see you as very courageous, like brave, like person. Do you think that even in the midst of you feeling the way that you do, you have doubts and stuff, that moment when you visualized everything, do you feel like deep down inside, when there's no one else looking or anyone else there, that you are proud of yourself and you do have this confidence that maybe you don't want to like show or give or something? Or because the fact that you could visualize that means you do have a sense of belief in self, right?
I realized this maybe a month ago. Lately, I've been downplaying my desires because I think my desires are too big. And so I want to say, you know what? There's nothing wrong with having a really small life and just being content and having a nice dinner with your family. And we always have birds in the backyard. And I'm like an old lady who I'm just like, there's 15 quail. Look at them. There's the mommy. I see it. And I just like get really, really into it. And I'm just bird watching and I'm like so happy. But then I realized that what I was doing was, I think that I'm really good at gratitude and being content with and grateful for what I have. But I think I use that as a crutch to then be like, but that's enough. Because if I really out loud say, I want to do big things and then I fail, that sucks. So it's better for me to just say, you know what? Who needs the big things? Life is really about your family, which is true. Life is really about raising your children, which is true. But you could also want more. And I don't think I was letting myself really, really push the envelope because I'm afraid of failure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I like relate to that so heavily. Where are you at now after that thought process? I mean, realizing that. Well, thanks for sharing too.
Yeah. Around the same time, it's just so interesting. I've never been this like open in my life to exploring the inner workings of Suze. And it's been really interesting because I had that thought like a month ago. And then 2 weeks ago, I finally came up with what I want to do next with my book. Like, how can I help moms now? And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do for the entire 2 years my book's been out, a year and a half. And it just came to me after I said, I don't want to be small. I want to be big. And I wasn't sitting there going, what big thing can I do? I just kind of like had that realization and just went on with my day. And then a couple weeks after it was like, oh, interesting. And so now I'm working on a new thing, which I'm really excited about. And it's all about, I don't want to explain too much because it's still baby phases, but it's all about the inner workings of the mother. Really, really, because you're going to have people who are like, oh, eat this soup, it'll be good for you. Or like, here, pat the baby's bottom like this when he's fussy. But what's going on in here, like really deep inside, because it's such an identity shift for moms, whether you have postpartum or not, you're like, who am I? I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself anymore. So like, how can we really get to the heart of what a mom is feeling and help her? And I was just finally, one day I was like, got it.
Wow.
Got it. But I think it's because I'm finally letting myself be a little bit more open and a little bit more vulnerable.
Wow.
Just so scary. What if nobody likes what I do? Seriously, this project. What if nobody gives a damn? What do I do? You know, that sucks.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Wow. That's crazy. Could you pinpoint a certain, I guess, like moment or thought process that kind of brought you to that? I know you said, I like what you said, is like, I don't want to be small anymore.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea of what maybe would have triggered that or got you to that point?
So I also see a therapist regularly, and I've been doing IFS work with my therapist.
I'm not sure what that is.
It's really cool. It's like reparenting your inner child.
Okay.
And there's a book called No Bad Parts, which was written by the guy who invented the IFS model, which is called Internal Family Systems. And there's like multiple parts of Alex. And Alex as a child had to survive in a family system and a society and a culture. And in order to do that, you had to make sure that you were protected. Well, certain parts of you maybe didn't gel with, I don't know what your background. So let's say you didn't gel with your mom and you had to protect yourself from your mom. So there was like a small part of you that was like, I can't get what I need from my mom. So now I'm going to close this part off of myself, or I'm going to become distant, or I'm going to, or whatever it is that part of you does that it needed to survive. And then sometimes the problem is we carry that with us, and then we struggle with our adult relationships as adults because, well, this is what I needed to do my entire life. It's not serving you now, but it served you then and it was needed. So that's why it's called no bad parts, because it's not bad.
Yeah.
You needed it to survive, and children will do anything that they have to do to survive emotionally. So I'm doing this work, and I realized that in one of the IFS things, I sort of had this like weird, because you sort of like go in, it's kind of a meditative experience that she walks you through. And it was like a really interesting ancestral moment where you didn't have the opportunity to play big in my ancestry, because we come from a land of turmoil and trauma, and you just really need a hope you don't die, and hope you get through the day, and hope that the men in your life don't die. So there's no time to be big. And who do you think you are to be big?
Wow.
And there's a very specific idea of what big is, especially with immigrant parents. My dad didn't care that I was an actor. That wasn't something that he supported, and he loves me and he's such a great dad, but he just doesn't get it. And I would tell him, like, oh, Papa, look, I did it. And he's good. Like, he just couldn't ask questions. He couldn't be enthusiastic because for him, that was not success.
Yeah.
I wasn't a doctor. And so I could hear all the women in my lineage.
Wow.
Sarcastically, because we have a very sarcastic family, sarcastically just being like, you can stop now. Just bring yourself back down. And that was, I could just hear them in my head. I could hear this, like the sarcasm dripping of what is the point? And I don't know, all that stuff. So I realized that this is just fear from a long line.
That's really powerful. That's crazy. Are there any tools or techniques or things that you're practicing or doing on a regular basis to combat in the IFS, to combat those kind of things when it does come? Like when you feel small or you're doubting and things like that is...
So she says for now, she's like, just watch, just listen, let that part of you speak, because you've been suppressing it. So you just let it speak and you watch and you go, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking care of me. I know that was hard for you. You sort of like, this is the reparenting part.
Yeah.
There's just parts of you that never really got to grow. And it's not, you don't say anything other than, okay. Like I see you.
Yeah.
I see you. Because there's parts of us that don't ever get seen. And that's so sad. And I try to put that practice into my children. Like for me, their emotional needs are just as important to be met as their psychological, physical needs.
Yeah.
I really, really want them to be seen.
That's one of the big things for me, and that I had to work through every day and trying to figure out is, I don't know, my biggest insecurity, I suppose, or whatever that it may be, is I don't feel like, if I feel misunderstood or unseen or not seen. And I think only the past few years have I realized that there are ancestral trauma that get passed to us, and that there are things that we experience that we don't even know what's going on, that we have to reparent ourselves, we have to relearn, and we have to accept some of those things, and then we have to be the ones to heal that part of us. But it seems like a long journey.
Yes, it's very there's no pill.
But that's really crazy to hear. That's really cool to hear. That's really encouraging to me. And it's actually like, man, and specifically from your background and where you come from, I can't imagine the things that you have to endure and things that you have to walk through. I mean, it's like interesting to hear you talk about like these voices, the sarcastic voices, just on that kind of level. And then they talk about, oh, you have to sit with it, hear them, and realize, oh man, we do that to ourselves then. Because then we basically manifest what we are always hearing, but we don't realize it's not necessarily our own voice. Yeah.
You're carrying other people's insecurities inside of you. I call it, in my book, I called it ancestral muscle memory. Because it's just such a quick muscle memory response. It's just in you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then is part of the journey for you right now, like reversing, or what is it? What would be considered? Is it reversing, or is it just owning, allowing to be, and then heal? Like, what's that? Like,
Oh, that's so interesting. So I think a lot of it is, okay, recognizing then like a lot of compassion and grace for your ancestors, because my God, how hard must have that have been. Thirdly, I get to do something really cool. I'm going back to Palestine in a couple of weeks. So it was like just crazy timing that it worked out this way. So I asked my therapist, I'm like, what do I do? I'm going to be there. I feel like this is such a great opportunity to sort of like break certain things, take in certain things, because with trauma like that also comes a great amount of resilience and strength. And I'm not about to say that my people aren't resilient. They've always been under occupation for the entirety of civilization, and they've survived and thrived to the best of their ability. And I love that. And so I'm going to go, and every time I go to all the holy sites that are really important to me to visit. And even though I wasn't born there, because I speak Arabic, I just go into the backside and I'm like, hey, can I just pass the tourists and could you just let me in real quick? So I'm going to go there, but this time I'm going to go with the intention of like really understanding like the years long struggle that's in my blood, and light some candles, because it's all these churches, and like light some candles and sort of like, and I want to write, and I'm going to write when I'm there, and write what it is that I'm feeling, and write what I want to let go of, and write what I want to keep.
Wow.
And then sort of I've been really into rituals and ceremonies lately. Cool. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And so just sort of have a little kind of private ritual where I just sort of like burn it away and like light a candle and write this thing and then burn it and sort of like just give it up. I don't know if that's really going to do anything, but I just thought it'd be really cool to have that opportunity.
No, that's so epic. No, it's not weird at all. No, I mean, I think that's a pretty like common thing. I mean, I've done it multiple times because I've always been encouraged to like whatever things that you're holding on to and you want to let go of. It's an act of writing it down, burning it, and then allowing it to physically let it go.
Yeah. And
then hopefully the belief that it'll manifest the fact that that'll also leave you. So I think that's beautiful. I think the fact that you're also going back. My brother would always say there's a Filipino proverb that says you can't know where you're going unless you know where you came from. And so it's always stuck with me of like why I love documentary stuff, and why I like finding more about my family and stuff, because it's like the more we know who they were and what they did, we understand more of who we are. And then I love what you said about with the trauma comes a lot with resilience.
Yeah.
And that's the part I think that I personally overlook maybe when I think about my family, what they had to endure during World War II.
Right.
I remember my grandma telling me about how she remembers watching her family members being burned and shot, and she's running away. She's like 10 years old. You know what I mean? And then my family coming to America and then immigrating here, my parents getting made fun of for the way they talk and stuff. And then how I have certain ways of, I wish I learned Tagalog. I wish I knew that. But growing up, you get made fun of for different things, and you're kind of like, and then so I realized their trauma, they didn't intentionally give it to me, you know what I mean? But it's, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to hear, we have to definitely do this podcast again. I mean, do another do a second.
Yeah.
Because I would love to hear, I mean, even if it's not a podcast, I would love to just hear in general. Yeah. I would love to hear what ends up happening. Do you have any hopes specifically with what you hope to get out of it specifically at anything from it?
No idea.
Yeah. Do you have any expectations, I guess? Yeah.
No.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
I've never let myself be this open before. I don't know what this feels like. Like all the feelings I have are so new. And it's really weird because like as an actor, we like to get out of ourselves. That's what I said, right? I don't want to be in my own skin. I don't like it in here for reasons, because it's too hard to be in here if you're not really willing to face yourself and see yourself. Yeah. Every time I had to, I didn't like it. So I would rather just be somebody else and play a character and not be me. And there's probably a little something there. And I think a lot of actors could relate to that. So to actually just turn inward and then just sit with myself is very new.
Wow. Well, it seems like you're doing a really great job.
I'll let you know. I feel really good.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, based off of the conversation just here from where you were at even a couple of weeks ago to where you're at now and the way you're talking about things, it seems like I just hear the word like refreshed refreshing. And it seems when I look at you, I don't know, that's what it feels.
I mean, it's not always fun. Like this morning, I was absolutely miserable. And I almost wanted to cancel because I was just like, I was so in my feels and I just really was not feeling great. But because I'm turning inward, because I'm actually facing things for the first time in my life, like that's not going to be always a fun experience.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying my best to stay curious, but sometimes it's just heavy. And like, I just have to sit with sadness, which is not something I ever let myself do. Distract myself with comedy.
For sure. Yeah. Wow. It's so crazy. One of the things I realized recently was because I wrote lyrics all the time. I sat in my sadness all the time. And so I became very aware of things. But because of that, I then argued with myself even more and did all these kind of things, which I really relate to the part of like feeling small or like I have big dreams, I have big aspirations. I don't think I necessarily equated it fully. I don't think I've ever articulated it in the way that you have, in the way that's like you didn't want to fail. Like it's so big that if you don't do it, then I don't think I've ever articulated in that way. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's kind of part of a false humility for me personally, or like a fear of being arrogant or a fear of not being humble. You know what I mean? Because inside of me, I believe I can do these things. And inside of me, I'm like, there's nothing different. Like doesn't matter. It shouldn't be anything different from me than anyone else. Like, I can. And I think it's because my dad was always like, hey, do anything you put your mind to. But then the craziest thing now that I think about it, this first time, is that my mind is the one thing that prevents me from doing anything.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Look at the surprised look on my face.
For sure. No, for sure.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. You're your biggest obstacle.
Yeah.
Your own worst critic, like all those cliches, they're all 100% spot on.
Yeah.
When you like picture people criticizing you, those are just your criticisms of yourself, but you're just projecting and you're like, oh, so-and-so's going to hate this. Or I can just picture somebody being like, this isn't any good. But that's because that's what you think.
For sure.
And I heard Brene Brown say this, and I actually felt this way before, and I felt encouraged a while ago. And then I heard her kind of solidify this. But unless you're in I can't remember the metaphor she used, but she's like, unless you're in the trenches with me, you're in the boat with me, or whatever it was, you don't get to criticize. And I think artist to artist, people understand. They're like, good for you. Like, you put your work out there. That's so hard, man. I get it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, what is,
Yeah.
Because I know what it's like to be vulnerable and put yourself out there and then hope that people receive it.
Yeah.
And I could never look down on you for that. So when you're doing that stuff together, it's just so easy to be surrounded by people who are supportive. But it's the people who don't know what you're doing, people who don't understand what it's like to do that. Those are the ones that are criticizing. And why do we care about their opinions? That's why Brene Brown, she's like, you don't get a say. You just don't. Your say doesn't matter because you don't know.
Yeah. Dang. That's so good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think something recently, the past 2 years, is like mindset has been a big thing for me. And I was talking to my therapist and I told him it's the most quote unquote successful I've been in my whole entire life. And when he asked me like, why do you think that? And I was like, because I didn't have any time. And I realized it wasn't because I didn't have time to think. Because I've been so busy trying to make it happen, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to feed my family. Right. My kid wouldn't be able to survive. And so even if I had doubts, I couldn't entertain it. I had no time. There was no point. It was just like, you have to make it happen. There's no other choice. And it hit me really hard of like, if I actually had compassion and really took the time to do what you're doing in the morning with affirmations and had better self-talk, what would that do if I was intentionally having better conversations with myself?
Right. What
would happen? And so I think why I love this conversation that we're having specifically for this is, I think when talking about pursuing certain things, and skill sets and stuff like that, it's always like, I don't know, there's practical ways of how to do this. But I think, like you said, the biggest hurdle is ourselves and our mind, and being able to unlock like these parts of us that are there already, and almost being able to have this compassion and grace for yourself of it's more than yourself that's impacting the way you think. And I think like what I hope for is, I try to tell myself, this is what I try to tell myself, regardless if like anyone likes it or sees it or my art or whatever that it is what was that process for me, was important to me, and did I accomplish what I hoped to accomplish? And then did it connect me to, did someone relate to it? Did it connect to somebody else? And it's funny is that song I showed you, actually, the line, you actually reacted to it. It was, my friends were there for me when I left or something like that. And my wife, my now wife, friend at the time, we weren't even talking or dating. She related to that line. We started talking. And then basically from that song, we ended up becoming really good friends and then ended up dating and then ended up marrying her. And so for me, it's like my music ultimately got me my wife. You know what I mean?
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it. But I think like our vulnerability and our bravery, when we're willing to put stuff out there and be real with ourselves and be real with other people, what that will do, we just have no idea. And so there are those haters. I really like that. Like the people that you do, that if they're not with you, they don't get a say. And I hope that when people do engage and listen to this, is like, I hope that they get what you're saying, and they see that it's just like this daily, almost renewal of self.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Daily renewal of self.
Yeah. What kind of advice or tips would you give to somebody who has a lot of passions and have a lot of things that they want to do, but maybe they are afraid to pursue one thing or they don't know what to choose? What would you say to them?
I heard Jesse Itzler. Do you know him? He's famous. He's a entrepreneur. You might know him if you saw him. He said, if you spent 18 minutes a day practicing the piano, let's say 18 minutes a day, by the end of the year, it's like, ends up being like 100 hours or something. You would end up being better than 90% of people. And it just requires 18 minutes a day. And I just thought, well, that's reasonable. And I really, really liked that. But it was also like the focus on that one thing. And there's a book, I think his name is Gary Keller, The One Thing. Yeah. I read it at the beginning of the year. And really, like, for us, it feels like if you just focus on one thing, then you're neglecting everything else. And then you're never going to get to it. What ends up happening is if you think that way, then you don't do anything. And then 5 years go by and you're like, I didn't do the piano and I didn't paint and I didn't write and I didn't do anything because I thought if I practiced one thing, I would neglect everything. Well, then you just neglected everything plus one thing. So for right now, if you could just hone in on one practice, it doesn't mean that you don't get to be the jack of all trades. It just means that that's how you become the jack of all trades, is you just hone in on that one thing.
I like that. So what got you into acting?
I didn't act until college. I had a teacher who called me over winter break, and she kind of taken an interest in me. And she's like, hey, so I noticed that you signed up for whatever class I had signed up for. She's like, I think maybe you should try children's theater. Just try it. And I'm like, okay. Like, a professor called me over winter break. That was like, oh, what an honor. So her name's Jeannie. So I was like, okay, that sounds great. Thanks. So I took children's theater, and it was by this guy named Professor Stevens, Chris. And Chris changed my life. So I did children's theater, and it was one semester where we just did James and the Giant Peach, and I played one of the mean aunts and I played the spider. And we just performed for, I think we had 13 performances. We went to a couple of schools in the area, and then we performed on stage at the college. And then I was done. That was it. And then Chris was like, hey, you should audition for the Shakespeare play in the spring. And I'm like, absolutely not. I don't do that. This was just like for class. He's like, just humor me and just do it. Just audition. So I auditioned with this girl named Erin, and I auditioned for the part of, it was As You Like It. The main character was Rosalind. Erin, she auditioned for Rosalind, and I auditioned for her cousin Celia. So we're doing the audition. Chris isn't watching us. And I'm so mad that he's not watching us. And now I realize it's because he knew he was going to cast us. We start rehearsals. I get cast in this play. We start rehearsals. And 3 weeks before opening night, Erin gets cancer. And she has to start radiation right away. We're 20. So Chris, instead of casting somebody else to play the lead, he was like, I need you to do it. And I'm like, Chris, I can't do it. I just memorized all of Celia's lines. We go on in 3 weeks. And I need you to do it. Like I just need you to do it. And I'm like, okay. So I had to drop all of Celia's lines, and I had 3 weeks to learn Rosalind's, which she has more lines than any other woman in Shakespeare, from what I understand.
Gosh.
I was like, can we cut this? This is too much. So anyway, I had this 5-star notebook, and I just wrote my lines. That's how I memorized. I just write until I can write it without looking. I did the show, and I was so proud of myself for pulling it off. God, it was so hard. It was so hard. Also, you're in the trial, like your friend has got cancer on top of that. It was just really, really stressful. And I was so proud of myself. And then I had this high on the stage. I didn't get it when I was doing the children's theater because, it's children's theater. But I had this high, and I didn't realize how strong the high was until I was off stage and the show was over, and I was dying. It was a drug. I was dying for it. And I had just never felt so exhilarated in my entire life than I was being on stage. It was the most profound feeling. And I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. I have to keep doing this. And the reason I think I cried about Chris is because when I moved out of, this was all in St. Louis. When I moved out of St. Louis, I had to come here, and I didn't want to come here. And I was like, fine, I'm just going to pursue acting here. I heard there was an acting community. And because of that, I met my husband at an acting studio. And because of that, I have Sammy and Ronan. And I see the trajectory of my life. And it was because Chris pushed me to keep acting. And so it's so cool because there's very few people who get to be like, this is the exact moment my life changed and went in this direction. And I have that. Yeah. And I'm so grateful. But yeah, so that's how I started acting. And I wasn't burning to do it. It just kind of happened upon it. And I was like, this is spectacular. I think sometimes people know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah. It's like almost like trusting those people too when they do. That's really crazy. I think what's also interesting is what the stories I love because it's because I relate to it is the one that you told, because it's because you trusted this guy you got this call. And then and then this guy believed in you. And then there's a circumstance that occurred, and there was a decision of taking that risk of doing the hard thing. And you could have not done it.
Yeah.
And who knows? But we don't need to think about that because it's not the point.
Yeah.
But when I look at parts of my life when I did things that I was afraid to do or seemed really difficult, it was the scariest thing, but the thing that paid off the most in my life. I'll forever remember that. And it always had to do with an art or expression. And so it's cool to hear your story and to see that how art and creativity in that journey, when we face things, it's like beyond the expression itself of what we get to do, but it leads us to the rest of our life. It's kind of like,
it's such a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
Interestingly.
Yeah. I love how then you reflected back and you're like, man, because of that, there's this whole domino effect.
Yeah, truly.
That then you met your husband and then now you have your kids because of that.
Yeah.
It's like now forever, that piece of you just will never, this is always going to be forever a part of you. And now because of that, it's like you're writing this book and then now you're on this other journey, personal journey. And now it's who knows, then you have this new project and then who knows what that's going to lead to. But then there's other moments that are going to come of a big task of can you be big? And it's crazy to think too, you showed up big in that moment when you were in 3 weeks. You had 3 weeks to do this huge, insurmountable, impossible thing. And you showed up and you were big. And I think it's like those milestones, right? Of like, man, we have these things to come back to of like, okay, like we were big.
Yeah.
And so it's not that you're not capable, you can't do it. It's like crazy. It's like a reinforcement of there is just a lot of trauma and things of the past that we have to work through and deal with and such.
It's funny because no matter how many big things you do, that stuff doesn't stick out to you. What sticks out to you is, God, I just don't know if people are going to like it. Like, why does that matter more than all of the success stories that you've had before? It's so messed up.
Yeah. No, for real. One of my pastors from when I was younger, he would talk about in the Bible, anytime there was like a victory in a war or something great that God did or something like that, they would always build like a monument or like they would pile up stones, almost like a milestone. It's just like, this is to remember that we'll never forget that God did something here. And I just conversation for me. I'm like, man, I need to do that, have my own milestone, so that when we're talking about these doubts that come up, you can look back, and be like, when I feel small, or I can't, or I feel like I can't.
Yeah.
I was big and I didn't even know I was trying to be big.
Yeah.
You know?
That's because back then you weren't thinking about it.
Yeah. No, for sure. So how do you feel now that like acting has played such a huge role and led you to multiple different things? How does that play to being like a mom?
And my first thought was, I've lived many lives. Because before that, I was quite a strong activist. Gone to Palestine, gotten shot at. They didn't shoot me, but there were bullets flying past me. And then I believed in it, and I wasn't afraid. I mean, I was a little afraid because I don't want to die.
Oh, for sure.
But I wouldn't do that now. So that sounds insane now because I have children. I would never do that. So it's just kind of fun to think of all the things that I used to do that made me who I am. Because sometimes when I'm really scared, sometimes when I'm intimidated, I'll be with like Qasim's business people, and they're so impressive.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, how do we make $1 billion? I'm like with these people and I feel so small. And then I'm like, none of these guys have ever been into a war zone and gotten shot at. They ever been tear gas? Even just tear gas? No, and I'm like, they're really smart and brilliant in these ways, but I'm like really tough in these ways. And I just try to remind myself of that.
That's awesome.
Because it's really easy to just have recency bias. So I see these really impressive people and I don't think that I'm that kind of impressive. So ergo, I'm not impressive. And I try to remind myself, I'm like, I've done some really crazy things.
Okay, sorry. 2 things real quick. 1, you said recency bias. I've never heard that. What is that?
Oh, it's like when let's say I'm trying to give an example. If you always have one opinion, but then you come across somebody or a different opinion, it's just really easy for you to believe that opinion now because it's just the most recent.
I see. Okay, cool. Thank you. Second, can you tell me more about you being an activist and going to...
Okay, if you're a Palestinian, it's very normal. It's just, it's very normal. We would go to these...
Wait, hold on. Sorry. Before you get into that, were you living there at a certain point?
No, I'd go and I'd like work there. Go and like work with an NGO or something.
Okay, so can you give me a little bit of timeline and context and then...
Like college and then a little bit post-college.
Okay.
My major was international human rights because I didn't take acting seriously, right?
Oh, okay.
So my major was human rights and I had to do a field project to get to your degree. You have to like go into the field. We didn't tell our school exactly what we were doing. So me and a girlfriend went to Palestine. And when the lawyers of the school found out we were there, because it's still like technically considered a war zone, even though there's not like a current war, they were like, if something happens to them, their parents can sue. Oh my God, like they were panicking. But we were doing really kind of dangerous things. It was really, really awesome.
What can I ask?
So like we did this one thing where, we worked with this organization where their job was they would get invited, and it's cool because Palestine's predominantly Muslim. The Arabs there are Muslim, but this was a Christian organization, and they got invited by the locals to act as not even an intermediary, but like just to stand in the middle. So if an Israeli soldier has a gun pointed at you and you've done nothing wrong, which is always the case, they want you there with like cameras and stopping them. We have these red hats. And so it's very easy and then they would document what's going on and things like that. And if you have a camera, sometimes it would make them calm down a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we would go there. When?
Yeah. What year? What?
2008.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
That's kind of like it seems ahead of its time in that kind of way.
I know. I don't
using
even
that
think
kind
we
of
had
tool.
Cameras on our
On your
It
wow.
was like just regular cameras. So anyway, I worked with that organization, and like we had, for example, there was a village of kids who their school was in the next village, and they would have to walk. but it was really dangerous for them to walk because there are these Israeli settlers who live there illegally on the land that is theirs, that is the Palestinians. And they are really, really awful to the children. Like adults are really awful to the kids. And it's really dangerous for them. And so the children wanted to mount this protest, like the elementary school children.
Wow.
Where they would I'm going to be brave and I'm just going to walk to the school. And it was so scary for them that it took us hours to decide whether or not we were going to let them do this, because they wanted to do it on their own and walk, and they'd be able to walk to school. It was so dangerous. The settlers were so angry that the Israeli soldiers stopped us from escorting the children. So we made the Israeli soldiers in a tank go behind the children and escort them to protect them from the Israeli settlers that were coming with pitchforks. It was awful. And we sat there. I remember we sat there for, I don't know how long. All they want to do was walk to the school and then walk back down this hill. And just as this is not talking about resilience. These are children. And they're this is our land. We belong here and we have a right to just go see our friends and walk to school. And I remember we were all just paralyzed with fear, terrified, waiting for them to come down this mountaintop. And then suddenly, you just saw the kids running, and we were just so elated and relieved and anxious. And it was incredible. And it was incredible to see children fight for that. It was all day of us trying to decide, what do we do? How do we support this local community? And I was blown away by the strength that the children had. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Part of me, it's when I hear stories like that, it's hard for me to be as one being an immigrant kid living in America, and then the fact that we have the luxury to talk about and go to therapy, talk about our feelings, and go through figure out our traumas and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a real privilege. It's a real luxury. And then
oh my God, yeah.
To think about what you're just talking about with these kids who are literally who can't even just hang out with their friends. It's sometimes it feels hard. This is me outwardly processing a struggle of mine of how does this matter?
Oh, I 100% agree.
I can't imagine how you feel since you see it.
I felt that way during my postpartum. I wrote about this in my book. I'm oh, just shut up. You live in Scottsdale. You live in a resort town. You don't have to work because your husband makes enough money for you to stay at home and take care of your baby. The money's fine. My family sometimes isn't sure if they're going to have water because as of collective punishment, we're going to cut off your water. And they can do that. And I'm sitting here going, I'm sad. I have a perfectly healthy baby and I'm sad. It made it really difficult for me to actually just honor my own feelings because I know what real struggle looks like. And I shamed myself for feeling that.
So how do you work through that? I mean, how have you worked through that? How do you?
It's still honestly kind of a struggle. It's kind of a struggle. I think the best way of coping with it is understanding that, number one, I'm absolutely privileged. If you live in America, you're privileged. End of story. That's it. So, and I'm not saying that there aren't problems here. We're sitting here talking to two brown people. I lived through 9/11. It's hard, but the fact that everything that we've gone through in the last several years and our system isn't falling apart, that's something incredible. And I don't think that that's why I vote in person. Because I just the fact that when people don't vote, I'm how could you not? It's what a privilege and what an honor it is to be able to have a say, even though sometimes I'm not convinced that it's actually true. So one, I have to acknowledge the fact that this is a complete luxury, just being able to acknowledge my own feelings and turn inward. And two, it's going to make me a better person all around, which if every single person in life, no matter what the external struggles were, if we all took the time to go inward, I think that would make things so much better. Number three, it makes me a better mom. It makes me a better mom because every single thing I learned about myself, I'm oh, it's because when I was a kid, I wasn't validated. I was the oldest child. That's so hard. And especially with immigrant parents, I ended up being a parent, which means I didn't get to be a kid. I would never let that happen to Sammy. So as I start thinking that way, he doesn't raise his brother. That's not his job. His job is to be a child. And so if it makes me a better mom,
wow.
That for me that's worth it.
Yeah.
But still, I acknowledge the fact that it is a luxury.
Yeah. No, that's so, no, that's so good. That's so helpful. I mean, especially because I don't know if it's culturally from my background or just in general, but it's easy to feel shame or shame myself for things, right? Or be super critical or judgmental. So like to acknowledge that it's a luxury, but then not to shame yourself for the fact that this is where we're at and where we're in. But then, oh yeah, I think what I've been struggling with and what my therapist said was like, look, it's never selfish to work on yourself. If you want to help other people, then helping yourself is always going to be like important to do if you want to help others. And so the fact that we do have this luxury to be able to do it, and I like how you said, no matter the external factors, that being able to take care of ourselves or look inward will always help other people, I think is super encouraging for me, but obviously doesn't necessarily solve this problem of how do I care for others in the midst of me being able to do what I'm doing. But I do have a kid. And so that rings very true for me with what you said is, yeah, because I see the way I'll react to something. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? What's that? Why am I doing that? And then remember my past or something. And obviously there's good things too. It's not always bad.
Kids have a way of bringing it out of you.
Yeah. So I guess this is kind of maybe off topic. I'm not really sure. But the other part of me, right, is like, I want to be able to figure out how to help, right? Like my family and and when there's so many things going on in the world, and it's the question is, what is video? What does this do for others? Is it a selfish pursuit? Honestly, for me, part of it is because I want to learn from other people and I want to like understand myself in the process by understanding other people. And I just hope that this becomes an extension that people get to just be a part of a conversation and then hopefully get something from it. But obviously there's ways to do documentary or tell these people's stories, you know what I mean? Like all these different things. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out from your experience, you actually being in the trenches, literally getting shot at and seeing all these different things, to being where you're at now. I know you gave me those 3 points, which I think are really awesome. I guess I'm just trying to think, how do you care about your immediate community and village while knowing that there are other parts of your community or village are suffering and stuff like that? How do you reconcile that, I guess?
It's really interesting. The human experience is so dynamic. And for example, I remember once I was there, I might have just been visiting just for fun and in Palestine, and we were at a graduation and I was dancing with my cousin and I started laughing and he's, what's so funny? And I'm like, if you just helicoptered me in, opened up the roof to this building and put me in, you would have no idea where you were, because we were just celebrating life. Somebody graduated from high school. We were just dancing and having a good time, and you would never know. And so the pursuit of happiness through the mist of sorrow is something that especially people in places like that search for. But it just shows the extent of what makes us all the same, because we all are in the pursuit of happiness. And usually what gets in the way is our interpretation of things. And this is why like people on the other side of the world can be really happy. But here we're all on depression medication, even though we've got access to clean water and access to clean food and access to healthcare and access to everything. And you can walk around, you can wear whatever you want. Oh, but we're depressed, and it's mindset. And so, but I think like every mom, wherever in the world you are, is going to relate to, I don't know why, but I just feel sad for no reason. I don't understand. I have a healthy baby. Why am I upset right now? Why? It doesn't make any sense. And so there are things that are just ubiquitous, that are just cross-cultured, cross-humanity, that are the same, and that motherhood is hard. Wherever you are, motherhood is hard. And those are things that every other woman on the planet can relate to. And we're all just trying to experience it and get out of it. And so there are just sort of ubiquitous truths that are if you remind yourself that that's what connects us and that's what makes us human, is like every woman complains about her husband and every husband has the wife jokes. You know what I mean? That's across the board.
For sure.
I think that's what connects us. That's why writing the book, like it was, I mean, people from, I remember like once was like a lady in London and then one was this woman in Mexico, and they're both like, you're both, and those are different cultures, or different people. And it's still, they felt some sort of camaraderie. And it wasn't about my location. It was about that being a mom is hard. And I just said it out loud. So yeah, there's just truths. For example, I'm going to Palestine next week, middle of a war zone. My cousin's, hey, can you buy me some AirPods? I really love some AirPods. That's what she wants, what she's thinking about. And I think that we forget that just because people are in hardships doesn't mean that they still don't care about the same thing, boy problems, or school's so hard, or my kid's driving me crazy. Like those are just all part of the human dilemma. And that's the stuff we can connect on, even if I can't connect on your localized trauma.
That's so good.
I suppose.
Thank you for your wisdom.
I don't know what I said.
Well, we have it recorded.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I think, man, we'll definitely have to continue this conversation when you get back and do this again. But I guess to start wrapping it up, like just from our conversation, it's really cool to see. So before that, so you went to college for international
Human rights.
And then ended up acting. And then you ended up doing both. You acted, you did some films, and then you actually went to Palestine and then did this crazy thing there. Then you moved here. Then you started script writing. You met your husband.
We kept making movies together.
Okay. You kept making movies together and then made some kids. and then you wrote a book. And now I'm doing some inner working, and then you're going back to Palestine and taking that to another level, and then starting a new project that we'll soon find out. It's super cool. Okay. When you were younger, so even like 16, when you were in that Toyota Celica, did you know this? Did you think this is where you would be at?
No, I definitely wasn't living in Arizona in my head, in my visualization. I had zero understanding of who I was. Zero. So I never really knew what my life was going to look like. I was just sort of like, I've realized now that I've been half asleep my entire life. Just coasting, just getting through the day. Happy, as happy as you could be when you're not awake. Just very like, Yes, I coasted. I had no idea what my life was going to look. Oh, that's not true. It's true, but it's not. I was told when I was 9 I was going to be a missionary. I spent about 10 years as a child being like, oh, I'm supposed to be a missionary, only because somebody told me. It was a prophecy that I later found out wasn't a prophecy. And so I was like, oh, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't think I had a really big desire for it, but somebody told me, and I kind of like when people just tell me what to do, which is something I'm working on. But it's because I never have enough faith in myself or my intuition to be like, how am I feeling about this? I don't know. But if you could just tell me how I'm feeling, that'd be really great. So my first thing out of high school is I went and I worked with missionaries in Jordan as like a kind of an missionary intern. There's a program called AIM, and I was an aimer.
Wait, AIM? What?
I was Pentecostal.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, AIM?
Yeah. Associate in missions.
Oh my gosh.
That can't ring a bell. There's no way.
Where were you at the time?
Louis.
St. Louis? Oh my gosh, why does it sound so familiar? Okay, anyways.
So I did that, and I was like, oh, I don't belong here. That was like one of the first kind of intuitions I really, really followed. And I went there and I worked there, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. I don't know who I think I am to tell other people who to believe in and what to believe in, and how this just doesn't feel right to me.
And this is, and you were how old?
19.
19, okay.
Yeah. And I left, and I went back to St. Louis and just kind of kept going with my life, being like, oh man, I'll figure it out someday. So yeah, I did that because people told me to do it.
Interesting. Wow. That's crazy. So something you got it from 9 years old. 10 years later, then you two made a decision.
Yeah, well, that was the decision the whole time. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be a missionary. Great. Well, I guess it'll happen someday.
Crazy. How does that moment or that whole moment of era of time, how does that relate to now?
Try to forget about it. I don't love that part of my life. I'm writing a book about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's called, you ever heard of deconstructing? So it's my whole journey on deconstructing. But really, it's not necessarily about deconstructing. That's sort of the overall, I guess you could say that. But really, it's like deciding who you are and what you want to be, aside from anybody else's opinion of you. The church, which was predominantly white and a little bit black, thought being the only Arab girl that my job was to go then spread the message to. And really, I was like, it's like positive racism, I guess, because like it wasn't God. It was they met a missionary who was a missionary in the Middle East, and then they saw me talking to her, and they were like, "Oh, she should be a missionary to the Middle East."
Wow!
Like, and then I found that out when I started writing my book. I asked my mom, I'm like, "Mom, who prophesied? What was that?" And she explained, and I was like, "That's not a prophecy. That was like a puzzle piece that some dude just put together," and was like, "Oh, you know what she should do?"
Interesting.
Yeah, which feels very. So there I was living my entire life because some guy had an epiphany. When you're alone in your room without anybody to tell you what to do, who are you? And that was my problem. I was always what other people needed me to be. The eldest child, the eldest girl. As a girl, I had to be really good. I had to be a good girl because of the reputation of my family and the reputation of my sisters. If I did anything wrong, no one would marry my sisters. This is stuff that was put upon. But what did I really want? I don't know.
Wow.
So,
oh my goodness.
It's stuff that now I'm like trying to dig at my intuition I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And I think a lot of us struggle with that. I think a lot of us, because children have intuition. Don't let your child lose it. They have intuition, and then it gets buried because, oh, well, what does mama think and what does daddy think? And you have to be nice to uncle, even though you don't want to necessarily talk to uncle, but you have to. Okay, so now that's a societal norm. So now I'm forced to do this, even though my intuition is telling me I don't really want to go say hi to my uncle or whatever it is. If somebody says, "Can I have a hug?" I will look at my kid and I'll go, "Only if you want to."
That's awesome.
It's like, maybe he doesn't want, just listen to your body.
Yeah.
And we shove that away. And then now we're all adults going, "I don't know who I am. I don't know. Well, it's because we lost it. And now we're sitting here trying to go to therapy and find it again. But what if you never lost it, Alex?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you lost it.
No, for sure.
Just generally, so much of us have. Like, but what if we never did?
That's very, very insightful.
Well, I learned that from my kids. Ronan calls his intuition his little mouth.
Really? Man, I wish I could talk so much longer. I like, because even on that part of it, being a parent, they always say, like, you can learn, obviously you learn a lot about who you are from your kids, or from the edges, right? Like 70 and up, 80 and up, and then from 8 and below.
Yeah.
And I think I struggle with, I don't know what it is. I'm like, maybe I have to sit and think about it. But I'm like, man, what have I learned from my son? You know what I mean? And because even when you're talking about trusting their intuition and stuff, my wife is a huge proponent of, if he doesn't want to do anything, if he doesn't want to hug someone similar, we're not going to force him. Yeah. If he doesn't want to say hi, we ask him if he wants to, just let him do his thing. So that's the only way I'm able to relate. That's the only reason why I'm able to relate to what you're saying, because for me, I think it's respect. Yes. Right? Because that's how I was raised.
But you're not respecting your child.
Yeah.
You're trying to respect your uncle or whatever.
Yeah.
Because his opinion matters more than your kid.
Yeah.
What does that teach the kid?
For sure. There's all these things that, because these are all these, like, way I've been taught and raised. And it's like, how, unless I have these kind of conversations, I won't, unless I'm looking for it, I won't know what I don't know, kind of thing.
But kids know.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They know. And this is what I think. They just got here. Like, your kid's less than 2, right?
Oh, he just turned 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
He just got here. Like, he's been here 2 years. He is way closer to the heavens than you are. There's still like a portal open, a connection there that your kid has that you just don't.
Okay,
you're just too old and jaded. Truthfully.
Absolutely. No,
Truthfully.
hands down.
And they just
Absolutely.
have this like
innocence and joy and freedom and so yeah. Okay, so this morning my son, he's starting to do this thing where he takes these dinosaurs and he started playing, right? And he'll hand them to me and he'll always want to play, and we'll just walk around. He goes shopping shopping for mango. He wants mango all the time. And so like we'll just walk around with these dinosaurs and just go, and I'm like, oh, let's go hiking, let's share the mangoes with your friends. You know what I mean? Like things like that. But I have to leave, I have to go to work. And so he's like crying, he's pulling my hand, and he's play, come play with me. And he'll give me the toys, like, please play, and he'll like tug on me and then he'll like, cry.
Guilt.
Yeah. And then I'm like, sorry buddy, I'm like holding him tight and I'm hugging him, and then he like bites me really intensely like on my chin. And so I was like, oh, it's like, Asen, you're going to go in timeout. And we usually do, like, my wife said, like, a minute for every age.
Year. Yeah.
And so it was like 2 minutes, but this time I only did 30 seconds because I was like,
because he loves you.
He loves me so much. Yeah. He just wanted to be with me, and I didn't want to punish him for like, because he doesn't know what to do with his feelings.
Yeah. They're so big.
Yeah. And so, one, what can I learn? Two, how do I do? How do I deal with that?
That situation, I think, he's 2. I'm trying to remember what my kids were like when they were 2. I would acknowledge the fact that because everybody wants to be seen. I don't care how old you are. In fact, the more so when you're a child. So he needs his feelings acknowledged. Hey, it's not okay to bite, but you were really upset, weren't you? God, that's so hard. I'm so sorry. I don't want to leave either. Like that whole like, oh, I totally get you, bro. This is not a cool situation to be in.
Yeah.
And anytime I've done that where I'm like, yeah, you're allowed to feel, or here, go bite the pillow instead. Here you go.
Yeah.
Because you're right. They have big feelings and they just don't know what to do with them. It's the same as teenagers. Teenagers and toddlers, it's the same area of their brain that basically just downgrades for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's just the acknowledgement of, hey, this isn't how we do it, but I totally understand why you feel this way. It's so hard. And then I usually try to wrap it up with do you promise when I get home we'll play? What is it that you want to play? And then almost set up the situation with the dinosaurs and the mango and whatever. So it's ready, and then you have to keep your word.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so okay. And my wife's, what we're trying to do is trying to acknowledge him, but when we acknowledge him, obviously he's still sad.
Yeah, that's okay.
And so then...
The thing is don't try to get him out of being sad. That's because this is what we do. This is what my parents did to me. Sorry, Bubba. I wasn't allowed to be sad. If I was sad, I had to go be sad in my room. Because why are you upset? Everything's fine. What's the big deal? And they downplayed all of my non-happy feelings. So I was never allowed to be anything but happy. But that's not normal. Like you're allowed to be sad, and don't be sad. Stop. Well, what is he supposed to do? He is sad. So, okay, well, now I know. Don't be sad. I'm just going to push that feeling down and become a weirdo artist later.
Hello.
This is how it happens. This is the formula. It's true.
No, for sure.
To the only person who isn't broken that is an artist.
No, for sure. Absolutely. No, hands out.
All comedians, stand-up comedians, they have the worst stories.
Yeah.
But that's why they're funny.
Yeah.
That's how they coped.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow.
But just let them be sad. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I want my kid to be an artist, but not because of I didn't let him be sad.
I'm doing this for you, I promise. This will serve you later.
You're going to be a genius, kid.
Now go to your room.
Don't be sad if you want to be. Oh, it's so terrible. No, I appreciate that. That's good. Okay. Wow. Thank you for that. But I think that's really cool. I love this conversation as a whole. Thank you for sitting with me, inviting us into your home, being vulnerable, inviting me into to you. And yeah, I think this conversation is like a pure example, an epitome of master of integration, of like where you're sitting with me talking about acting, talking to me about how you're dealing with things inside of you, like your mindset, mentality, you being a mom, and you're giving me advice even of how to be a better parent and father, and then you working with NGO, right? And then you being an author, and then there's just so much there that if you didn't walk the paths that you walked, if you didn't pursue the things that you pursued and allowed it to to go and lead you and allow yourself to be in those places. This is, you wouldn't be where you're at. And what I hope, for what other people can get from, but for me personally, it's like, okay, like continue to face the things that seem scary. But when you feel small, do your inner work and mindset, but also the traumas and things that are in your past, it's not just your own thoughts.
Yeah.
And so have grace on yourself to be able to be big, and that you can be big. And that's, and then let my kid feel. And so if I can let my kid feel, it's because I can allow myself to feel. And so I got to do that. And I just love how your story like comes together. And I didn't even get to ask you about Miss Arab USA and like how that happened.
I don't know. I wanted to elevate my activism and my acting. I just wanted a stage, platform.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I became Miss Pageant winner, I'd have a platform. So I have no desire to be in pageants. I don't care about walking down with I don't care. None of that stuff. I usually follow it up, like if somebody finds out, I'm like, but I'm really smart, okay? Because I don't want people to, it's like this shame thing I have. But yeah, because that's just not my thing. I don't really care about that stuff. But I was just looking for a platform for my acting and my activism. That was at the height of the Syrian war. And I just so desperately wanted to talk to people about it and about rescuing kids from
Wow.
So that's all that was. I did it once and I won the national competition, and I will never do it again. I'm too old now, but
man, that's so epic though. That's like another you being big again, right? That's and out of a place of your care for people. Like that's so awesome.
Well, that was one. The other one was I was an actor and I was trying to get my face out there.
Sure.
I can sit here and go, yes, it was all about trying to help the Syrian children. But that's not.
No, for sure.
True.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, and even that, I respect that. But even that, right? Like you wouldn't have never done that if it wasn't for the two other things of being an actor and your NGO experience, and then also your just life experience as a whole. And so I think what I think is really awesome, it's like, to me, it solidifies in my belief of go towards the things that you are passionate about. And some things may lead you in weird directions and not where you hope to be or want it to be, as you talked about. But it's also, you're using it to write this other book that who knows what that's going to do too. And so I just think that it's okay. You're acting, let's say you doing Miss Arab USA, NGO stuff. I think I'm encouraged to be like, okay, this is where I'm at right now doing podcasting. I never thought I'd be doing podcasting. I do enjoy it, but mainly I just love talking to people and hearing their story. And that's part of the documentary filmmaking piece. So it's like, and so for me, it's just, okay, cool. Like I see someone that's like in their journey who's I respect. And I'm like, okay, like I'm like really inspired. And now I'm going to have to keep on doing my inner work and keep on working on that kind of stuff.
So two things. Number one, I had a therapist once tell me, I think she got it from like Oprah or something. She's like, you can have everything you want, just not at the same time. That's really good to remember.
Yes.
There's just seasons for things. And then the second thing is Chris, my professor who got me into acting, he taught me about how things are intersected. So we took a class that was a hybrid of, it was history, literature, and theater. And we studied a specific time in history and how theater and literature correlated with what was going on and how art was mimicking life and life was mimicking art. We were doing the McCarthy era when they used to blacklist potential communists. And a lot of those people were artists that were being blacklisted for their art. They had an opinion. It went against the government's opinion. And Charlie Chaplin was kicked out of the country. He went to France and they wouldn't let him back in because they thought he was a communist. So there was just all of this. There was so much happening, but art had it played such a big part of it. And so if you look back at our history, we just, Charlie Chaplin was kicked out of the country. Charlie Chaplin was an artist who was trying to make points and the government didn't like it. This is when art and the world were colliding. And we're going to look back 100 years from now at whatever art and government or whatever is colliding now. And it's just always, always happening. Like art is keeping us all alive and telling the story of what's going on in this day and age. And I just think that that's so cool. And if we could get to be a part of that story in any way of helping to tell those stories, what an honor.
Yeah. That's super good. Okay, last thing. What are your two favorite quotes right now?
Oh, shoot. Was I supposed to know this? I was thinking of yesterday. I was thinking of telling my children, we had a bullying situation yesterday. So I was thinking of telling my children, for evil to It only takes, what is it? For evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Because we were talking about bystanders.
That's good.
That was one that was really, really important to me. And you guys are going to laugh, but this is my, if I had to teach my kids like one thing in life, like Bible, gospel scripture, it comes from Dr. Seuss. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And man alive, do I just want to tear up when I just think that kind of sums up everything. I can't have apathy.
Can you say it again?
Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. It's from the Lorax. Oh my gosh. Read the Lorax to your son.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Oh my gosh. That's so good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Doesn't it just sum up a lot?
Yeah. No, it really does.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it came from a
Dr. Seuss. Yeah.
An artist.
An artist. Yeah. Let's go. Okay. And then, do you have any tips or advice? I mean, you've given so much. There's so many gold nuggets in this.
Yes, I'm very wise.
Any advice and tips for anyone who's
Pursuing art.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna suck. Not just the pursuit of it, but also your work might suck, especially at the beginning. If you're a writer, your first draft is going to be awful. My first draft of my book was 30 pages and it was disgusting and it wasn't at all what it looks like now. But if I looked at that and judged it and thought I'm awful, this is garbage, it was a bad idea, and just gave it up, I wouldn't have had this book. So accept the fact that it's just going to be awful, but you have to get it out so you can therefore look at it and examine it and then work with what you have. But if it stays up here, it's just never going to get anywhere. So it's going to suck. Be okay with that.
I love that. Cool. I like that. Oh my gosh.
Very positive.
Yeah.
You're going to suck.
Just be real.
Just be cool.
That's awesome. Okay. Amazing. Well, thank you so much again. I really
you.
appreciate it. It's been such an honor.
So
I
fun
really,
talking to
yeah,
you.
so great talking to you. Thank you for watching and listening to the Masters of Integration podcast. There's so much that you can learn and glean from Suzanne. Don't worry, you will suck at times,
But that is okay.
but that is okay. Working on yourself and caring for yourself is
Not selfish.
It's not
That's what you
selfish.
said.
yeah. So keep doing you. All right, peace.